Gotta share it up.
All right, we are live. Good
Live and
evening,
direct.
villagers.
Good morning, good evening, good night. Let's try to share up the live as soon as people come in. Just share up the live. Let me see. Okay, I get my update there. Hold on there, fellas. Heights room. Nice, too bad.
All right, we are live.
You must get the echo.
You must get it too.
If we get an echo, then it's not we.
That is not a good start to the show, exactly.
No, not at all. So how we doing there, fellas? How everybody keeping in their neck of the woods?
Well, I'm alive. As a man came a little Pfizer dose yesterday.
Yeah, big boy.
Yeah. Bill Gates talking to me in my sleep and thing.
Yeah,
you know
big boy.
though.
You're inside the window there.
Inside the window, Pfizer.
Yeah, well,
but it's all right.
We can't get them things here. I hear you, brother. I hear you. Well, we have anybody up inside yet?
Yeah, now people now started to crawl in and think there, man.
All right. Lovely. Well, good night, villagers, once again, and welcome to another edition of Heights Room Live. And joining us tonight, we have Dennis Ramdass on the show tonight. Dennis is a software developer for VMware, a tech company out of the San Francisco Bay Area. He's here tonight to talk to us about artificial intelligence. So welcome, Dennis.
Thanks.
You were saying something there, Torian. Did I get something wrong there?
No, you get correct. Palo Alto, California.
Yeah. Right. Big boys.
It's a big boy. And Zuckerberg and Bill and them making COVID vaccine for to track.
Yeah. So Dennis, before we get into our roundup, because these days we're doing a little roundup before last week we had the good, the bad, and the ugly. But just now we go check this. But tell me a little bit about what's going on with the COVID situation there now, Dennis. Like how the restrictions easing up, like where's the real word on the ground there?
Yeah, so right now stuff kind of opening back up. So across America, you saw the CDC update the guidance that you don't need a mask, basically kind of paving the way for states and counties to relax the mask mandate, kind of as vaccination numbers go up and COVID cases go down. So California on target to remove the mask mandate on June 15th, outdoors, indoors, everywhere. So.
Well, we far away from that, brother. But that's nice to hear, man. That's nice to hear. That really goes to show us the power of the vaccination process, the power of planning and executing in terms of the vaccination process. So that's really, really good news. So what we're going to do now, people, before we get into the AI heights with our boy Dennis, is just want to take a little roundup of what we have going on for the last week or so in our segment we like to call Check This. All right. So for now we call it Check This. Don't worry, we working on it. So right now we have Check This. All right.
This. Dennis don't have fans in the comments already. Dennis.
Check it out. So the first thing I want to touch on is that it looks like if we're going to be under a state of emergency for the next 3 months. Now, the last thing we heard was that they are going to debate it in Parliament, which is supposed to be on Monday. Since then, I have not really heard anything. I don't know if anybody heard anything. I have not seen a report or anything. So I'm guessing it's in the process, it's in the works, and they're going to have their probably just that they got a majority in the Parliament, and it's going to be an extra one. So we're looking at the next 3 months, more or less, for the state of emergency in Trinidad and Tobago. So I hope that everybody is getting accustomed to the cabin fever and all of that is going on with the state of emergency. I mean, people still out during the day. Speaking of people still being out during the day, today we had a bit of a situation at the Caroni cremation site. I don't know if people saw what happened there, but I was really taken aback, and a lot of people had a lot of different things to say about it. But what we really had there was that you had people to be cremated, and the bodies weren't being allowed into the cremation site. So you could only imagine the bacchanal that was. And from what I am gathering is that the Tunapuna Regional Corporation closed the cremation site even before people reached. So let's see, what do you think about if you, as a man, carrying your loved one to the cremation site, and when you reach there, time to do your last rites, it lock up and they tell you you can't come in. What going through your head there?
Well, to me, I think people ought to be fair that it always have two sides to our story, yeah? And at the end of the day, I mean, we don't know because there was plenty police and thing was there. They basically say the Tunapuna CEO say close it down, and they say they had the passes and everything. But I mean, you also had to look to read between the lines that yes, they had the passes, but was there another reason that the officers on them say, well, listen, all your can't come true. Now, at the end of the day, it's something that a lot of people will say is denying, I mean, basic human rights to be able to, bury your loved ones and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it
Cremate,
seems
sorry.
almost, yeah, cremate, right? But then it's almost like you're seeing effects of this lockdown, effects of this SOE starting to trickle over into the more basic things, which what I mean is what it is really is a question of excessive force. Force not necessarily meaning physically locked down and violence, but in this case blocking off public facilities. You know what I mean? Because I mean for a CEO to lock down something like that, they also need they also need approval from the council. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the question is, did the chairman of the Tunapuna Corporation approve that position? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
I just think that's how it really. If to me, I think that that people are saying well it had overcrowded whatever, but be that as it may, you have people arriving, 7 people. So mismanagement. The first thing is mismanagement for allowing 7 people to book. That's the
right,
corporations, right? The next
right,
mismanagement is if it is that people that the pyres and thing are there, have something in place to tell people by the gate we only allowing the people who do any rights, which is a handful of people. You understand?
right,
A handful of people are going to do the rights, and you could pick sense from nonsense, I say. So, because I think that is really, really like a real inhumane thing, I would say, to lock up the gates on people who in that stage. I mean, I like saying that's how, okay, if there are too much people outside, you can't come and make a child inside the hospital or some kind of it's like that now. You know what I mean? It's like you had to kind of understand when you had to, okay, just pick sense from nonsense. But again, I don't know what really was the mandate and what was the reason for it. So again, we'll have to see what comes out. Any more reports about this? All right. With that being said, I want to talk now. Now people would say that there's all these agendas and thing going on with the COVID, and then we had our woman warrior of Trinidad and Tobago, Vicky, the activist, who jumped out literally of herself. Right? She jumped out of herself, and she said she's going to cuff down Rowley, she's going to cuff down the Alsing, and that's how Indian people, UNC areas, so Indian people are being negatively affected by the coronavirus and they are dying. And why is that? And it was like, everybody was like, I think everybody had to stop for a second and wonder what's going on with this woman, like really and truly now. Because like from saying you're going to cuff down the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health, to then saying that how COVID is attacking UNC people more than other people. I guess what she was trying to say is that something to do with like they're not getting treatment or something, but that's not, there's no data to support that now.
Yeah, it's frustration, Kota. I mean, if you listen to the lady rant, right? And I mean, that's what it was. It was a rant. To me, I haven't seen that level of incoherent ranting for a while. And I mean, it come at a time when the SOE just come in. So to me, I look at it as a cry for help. To be quite honest with you, because it sounded to me like what I mean, like many other people, they just at their wits end. They just don't know what to do anymore, and they're just in a state of disarray. I mean, to reach the point where you say I want to cough down it. I mean, you're thinking at that time. You know what I mean? You're thinking.
I hear you, but I think that this is how this person is because she is apparently
Well,
a vlogger, and she quoted her friends when she made somewhat of an apology video. She quoted people who she say was there with her, like Marcia Brave Boy and so on, and Jason Da Silva, who are known UNC vloggers, if you want to call them that. They are known UNC vloggers, although she says she's not a UNC vlogger. So it's kind of like, so who are you really trying to fool, really? And truly, this is like, it's very politically charged, and it goes to show you just how dangerous when given a platform, people can take the narrative now. It's not a good place to take the narrative, but this is what we're dealing with every day. So I mean, there is frustration, but there also you're big and you have sense, as they say now, but apparently not the case. Right. So we're moving on So being big and having sense, Mr. Rowley says that the vigils for Andrea Barrett are to blame for the COVID spike. Now, is there any well, let me not even get to that, right? Let me not even get to if there are any data about crowds causing, because obviously I would say that any kind of gathering, which is why we have the measures, causes spikes, and there were a lot of vigils. But answer me this, anybody in the comments, when we were having the vigils, right? Wasn't it more or less business as usual in the malls in Trinidad, in the food courts, having car show in C3? Was there a lot of other gatherings happening all over that weren't exactly the vigils? And when you went to a vigil, was there any rum drinking? Was there any body without masks? I went to one and it was very, very, very. Now, at the same time, there were a lot of people at the one, and I can see that there is a case can be made that this type of activity would have helped the spread. But to call out the vigils, I find that very kind of, again, something I don't know.
It was distasteful. It was distasteful because to me, I mean, you only have to go to a few parliamentary sessions to realize when you know you had to start to scratch your head and think, well, these are the people running we boy. You understand what I'm saying? Because of the level of conversation that going through. So to me, it's nothing more than tit for tat. Everybody going down in the mud, and you know everybody going at one another for this thing. But we had to be clear to bring things back out with respect to the data. You understand? And that is the picture that we have up there, which is the data, right? But on top of that data, showing exactly when the cases would have spiked and when the major events would have happened, you also had a similar situation playing out in the US. And maybe Dennis could shed us a small light on this, where at a certain point in time, Trump was actually attacking the Black Lives Matter movements and the riots that was happening in different states, saying that they are going to act as super spreaders. But later on, a few months later, scientists actually did the research and found that these events, these cities where these riots happened, actually didn't have major spikes in cases. Dennis, where's the view of US in terms in the US, given that you all have it solo in California, with respect to these mass gatherings?
Yeah, so I think there was some politicizing of whether the BLM riots did contribute to cases rising and things like that. And like you mentioned, I think they did analysis and they found that that wasn't the case. And there were super spreader events that were related to political rallies or certain gatherings. But I think overall, a lot of the data showed that these in general outdoor events did not spread as much as congregating indoors. There were high profile super spreader events where they were able to know that someone tested positive and symptomatic and was able to spread. But in general, a lot of the data showed that the large outdoor gatherings did not contribute as much.
Right.
I hear you. Makes sense. Moving on. We have an unverified story. So we wouldn't bring up that one. As we said, we wouldn't bring up that one. So let's bring up this one. The latest coronavirus comes from dogs. All right. Now don't get too frightened of Rex and Frisky and them at home right now. But this is a newly identified coronavirus that I believe it's in Malaysia, Leslie, I believe. Yes, and what they're saying is it was transferred from the dog, that it was in the dog, and it was transferred to a child. That was the child has presented symptoms of the coronavirus that was present in the dog. Now there are many types of coronaviruses, so it's not to say COVID was in this dog, so let's not get carried away. But at the same time, this is what we have to take into consideration when we think about these diseases and these viruses and how the spread is. We kind of sometimes forget that all living things carry these things now, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it's also to keep in mind that these things are zoonotic viruses that, you know, the conversation, so as Dennis and they, I think, probably in a very advanced stage of their exit strategies from, you know, it's almost like a set stage that you have to go through, Cutter, where it's like, you know, your population get vaccinated, your cases drop to a certain point, things gradually start to return to normal and whatnot. But the key thing that this article was pointing out is that with these viruses, it never you always have to stay vigilant, you know what I mean, because it as the research continues, certain things will pop up. So in this one, what they're saying is that it apparently had a combination of two known canine coronaviruses, and it contained fragments of both a cat and a pig coronavirus. So
Oh.
it's very advanced, you know, it's not simple science, and the nature of zoonotic viruses are actually quite advanced. So it's something where even when you finish your exit strategies, don't feel, well, you know what I
That
mean,
is it day.
it's back to the fetting.
Yeah.
No, it's a very sensitive thing that you always have to stay close to the science in order to guide how you move into the next stage.
And I think because of COVID, we actually now taking on these kind of things. We should see that there's a new kind of emphasis on paying attention to things like this. Because remember, when COVID now bust in China, nobody was even taking it on. You know what I mean? So
Right. That's true. That's
this
true.
these stories that would have, so this same story would have happened and nobody would think about it because we wasn't suffering from no coronavirus. You know what I mean? But now we understand how much we have to pay attention to these zoonotic viruses. Moving on. So something that really, really good to hear, that happened over the last week. Israel and members of Hamas Palestine agree ceasefire. All right. So at one point in time in the future, in the near coming future, we should be able to have a episode to really break down what is really going on in Israel and Palestine. But we all would have seen the kind of violence that would have occurred, right? All the bombs and so on that would pelting to and fro between Israel and Palestine over the last few weeks, and the ceasefire has occurred. I think that what people don't know is that there were also a lot of people who took action to get the Israel forces to kind of back as well, on the Palestinian side in terms of their unions and so on, encouraging people to stop and strike and not purchase and that kind of thing, and kind of hold the economy a bit. And all that is Israel, it's things you wouldn't hear about as much because of the nature of the media and so on. But it's good. Is always a good thing to hear when they ceasefire, when these things happening, because
Of course.
people
were suffering.
Yeah, war is not the answer. You know what I mean? Mystery box addiction. Moving on. The mystery box addiction that is sweeping China is killing innocent pets. Let's talk to me about this thing now. No, use the animals, man. Use the Zula. So come now.
Yeah.
Let me hear about this thing.
People have to understand that the economy evolving with this coronavirus situation, and the reality of what's going on in China right now is that consumption spiking. But if you think about it, I mean, I know a man with unlimited money, but many people in that situation. So if they're in this situation and they run out of things to buy on Amazon, the question is, what is the next fad? This article is to basically say, be careful about where your next fad is. So this fad that's going on in China right now is something called a mystery box. And it's basically people take it from one step to another, where initially it was like you just buy a mystery box at a certain price and you get a surprise of a series of different items.
Cannot work in Trinidad.
And then exactly, because all kind of thing, you know what I mean? You
cannot work in Trinidad.
And then all of a sudden now people finding dogs, live animals in this thing, and apparently the demand is
crazy,
super high. You understand? So people, if the mystery box reach earlier, careful how you support that, because you don't know where that coming from and what kind of stress these things going through.
Fawaz, behave yourself now. Fawaz, behave yourself, please. Right? Let's see. Take the image of the screen from my boy. I can't really take that on too much right now. That's crazy, bro. That's crazy. So again, as you say, you have to be careful where you're falling into which fad out. I'll tell you, can't work in China. You tell China, brother, send you a box. But I tell you when they say, partner, keep your box, partner. Wait up. It have a ham, I'm taking that. Right? It have money, I send in a box, but don't study what's inside it. Partner, not me, partner. I don't want to kick out your cocaine. Anyway, so I think that we could round up our check this segment for this week. So, people, you can always suggest us what you think we should check out today. People actually brought some of these topics to me, about the about the situation with the cremation site and so on. So I'm glad people reach out to us and let us know, hey, we should check this out, right? So please always keep that communication line open. So we're moving on now to our guest and the reason why he's here. So Dennis, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came into software development.
Yeah, so my name is Dennis. Went to Naprima College with these fine gentlemen here. Close classmates with Shankar Alessi here. So actually, when I was at NAPS, I started programming and doing software development. So I kind of started it as a hobby on my own, and really I started it kind of just taking my father's old programming books that he had from when he did his degree in UE. So figuring out how to program in Pascal, did IT for CXC, represented Trinidad in the International Olympics for informatics. So that was the programming Olympics, if you will.
Nice. What did you guys place in that competition?
So it was I think it was an individual competition, but did not medal. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Well, let me just drop you from this thing then.
Yeah.
Hey, you're rich, right? You're rich.
Yeah.
All right.
And then so I went to MIT for university and studied computer science. Did a bachelor's there and then also a master's in computer science, and then immediately after started my career as a software developer.
Nice. How much years you been in software development?
So I graduated with my master's in 2009, so this would be 12 years. Yeah.
At the same company, or you move around and things like that?
Move around. So I interned at a few different companies. So interned at Google, worked a little bit on Google Maps in the early days. So one of the features I worked on as an intern was being able to drop a pin and add a description. So that was the very early days.
That's you, boy.
You.
Yeah, I mean that was the theme, and and then after that I went to this company called NetApp. So they specialize in data storage. Was there for 4 years. Joined a startup that did cloud computing. Was there for 4 years, and then that startup got acquired by VMware, which I've been at for the last 3 years.
Nice. So you move around a lot. That's good. So for the lay person like myself and whoever not familiar with it, what is AI?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence is basically how to program intelligence into computers and machines. So right now, so if we consider what computers can do right now, it's basically what we tell it to do, what we program it to do. And that's kind of the simple thing that we have right now. But as we transition towards utilizing more of what computers are good at, so it's good at processing many things at once, it's good at storing a lot of data, things like that. So we want to leverage that to be able to find modes of intelligence that computers are better than humans at. And computers are able to recognize patterns in data. So that is kind of the main gist of machine learning. And then built upon that is artificial intelligence. So human intelligence is based on a bunch of different things, including pattern matching and figuring out how to model problems. So artificial intelligence is trying to take that level of intelligence and translate it into computer systems and computer programs.
Okay, and this is where like your software development skills and background come into play?
So software development is like a wide range. So AI is one particular piece of it.
Right.
So there are people who will focus on the AI aspect of it, but there's like a whole like industry of software.
Okay, cool.
So do you work on, as we said, so you say there's a big umbrella for software development. Do you work at projects dealing with AI specifically?
Some of them. So primarily what I work on is data center software. So think of a data center that running. So the software that able to manage the storage and compute for that.
Right.
And then in certain projects and subclasses of problems, you would want to apply machine learning techniques, artificial intelligence techniques.
Right.
So I'll give you a simple example. Like for if customers are running out of storage, you want to be able to predict when they'll run out of storage, how to like dynamically provision for them.
Right.
So you could think of like very simple ways to do it, to use an X number of gigabytes a day or whatever. But then
Right. That's good thing for me. I thinking about me there.
yeah, so you actually want to model as much as you could to be able to predict things like that. So that's where a whole set of data that you can learn from will be there, and artificial intelligence will be building it into the system, so you are able to dynamically allocate for them, for example. So that's a very like simple example of those kinds of techniques applied there.
Okay.
Sounds
So,
good.
what is your thought from your like as knowledge or experience? We're talking AI. The big man in the business is Elon Musk, and what he's doing with Neuralink. From your understanding, what is Neuralink?
Yeah, so like first of all, I'd probably like take some contention with like Elon being like the big man in the business. Like
Well,
he is
that's I put the quote for that. I put the quote for that. I
Yeah.
put the quote for that. But yeah, go ahead. Let me know about all that too.
Yeah, I mean, like I think Elon, like obviously, is like one of the world's
Loudest.
well-known technologists. He has his toes in a lot of different things. You know, SpaceX, Tesla. He started at PayPal, and Neuralink is kind of his foray into the artificial intelligence. But I think there are like a number of like both industry veterans in the AI space and researchers who have been there longer than him. So I would say Elon is trying to productize this and push the frontiers on that.
Okay. Fair enough. So I know what is your thoughts on Neuralink itself and what he's doing there? Is that good,
Well-
bad? No
well-
matter. What are you thinking?
Well, Dennis, as a person who might know more than a lot of the viewers in terms of what it is Neuralink?
Yeah, so let's start there. So yeah, you know, Shankar reached out to me and asked to, let's talk about Neuralink, like go deep on this, right? So Neuralink is what it's a company that Elon started, and their main product that they're trying to push and they've demoed is implantable brain device that could be used to gather data, but also potentially be able to control different parts of your body or different parts of computers. So if you look at the website and the videos, you'll see a lot of kind of flashy marketing and promo videos for it. But that is essentially what it is. So how Elon promotes it is it's a Fitbit inside your brain. So that's kind of yeah. So yeah.
My Neuralink need resetting right now. I understand what went on there.
Right.
But, okay. That's fine. So, what are there any, I guess, competition to Neuralink or anything similar to Neuralink going on right now from your knowledge?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about like the core technology and like we break down the pieces
Sure.
and then we can kind of say who
Sure.
are the competitors, right? So like this is in the space. So one of the things that Neuralink does is it tries to record and analyze neural data. So neural data is data from neurons in your brain. So trying to make sense of those electrical signals, right? So we know they exist. We've all kind of seen like brain scans. You can kind of see neural activity in different parts of the brain. So Neuralink tries to capture that. So there's a whole bunch of other companies and researchers that able to gather this data, and they are like invasive and non-invasive ways of doing it, right? So Neuralink is obviously invasive. It's a embedded like battery-sized device in your brain. So there are competitors in that space, but I think Elon is trying to make kind of a complete product out of it. So something that's in your brain that able to get the data, but then also able to make decisions on it and to transmit it wirelessly to computers or machines.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dennis, in a situation like this, just to put perspective for what people looking at right now on the screen, is essentially, from my understanding, it's a high bandwidth application for let me see, a scalable high bandwidth BMI system. right? And what he's advertising with that is essentially you would normally use your thumbs and whatnot to basically type in things, but this is giving the example of where it's actually training your mind to use this Bluetooth link to be able to control the phone wirelessly. There's a lot of parameters that comes with something like that. One of the things he's saying is that he's looking at beginning human trials by the end of the year. Being in the space, Dennis, is that just marketing, or is it that the technology has really reached a point where he could start testing on that? Is Silicon Valley there?
Yeah, so I would think that the answer to that in kind of the layperson's viewpoint would be no. Like that has a
Mhm.
big marketing asterisk versus it. So what he's trying to get like FDA approval for is embedding the device in like 5 people, right? Which I in terms of human trials, so there are a lot of different parts of the trial, and part of it is being able to safely do the insertion and gather data. So that is like step 1. So that might be possible by the end of this year to have an implantable device that tries to record stuff. Now there are many different parts to being able to transmit wirelessly over Bluetooth, like those things. So I think there's like a long runway of features there.
Mhm.
They are trying to get to the point where they can have a FDA approved embeddable device in your brain. And there is like some precedent for that. So like, there are pacemakers in your heart.
Right.
For
Right.
people who have Parkinson's disease, there are like neuro simulators that you can embed in your brain that will like neurally stimulate. So I think the next progression into that is being able to embed something that could record as well. So I think
So,
in
sorry.
terms of it is on the roadmap, I believe, and that could be short term. But in terms of like trialing somebody with this app, I think that's years
Mm.
off.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
In your, as you kind of like in more in the space. Now I heard some criticisms of Elon and the Neuralink folks in terms of their lack of publishing data on what they're doing. Is that like a real thing? Do they not publish? Do they publish and people just don't know where to look? Or what is your experience or thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of the competition in this space is in the medical community and the research community, and they are more used to an open, collaborative system, whereas Elon is in kind of the startup world where a lot of proprietary information, you're trying to get funding, you're trying to build a business. So certainly, like, yeah, a bunch of it is secretive, and I think there is rightful concern from the AI community and the wider health and wellness community about what Neuralink is doing.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So like,
But
sorry, go ahead, Leslie. Go ahead.
yeah. So Dennis, tell me something. Is it? I mean, Elon is trying to. I mean, with that SpaceX, all this stuff, he's basically looking towards making a lot of these science fiction fantasies, as real as quickly as possible. Right? That's the reality. But of course, with doing that, there's a lot of concerns about ethics and that kind of thing along the way that would crop up. If you do put a Bluetooth device in your head, let's say it becomes successful, the Neuralink is $500, and it'll allow you to keep your academic focus, wit, and sharpness well into your 80s and 90s. Let's say that's what it's advertising. Is there a possibility of that being hacked?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, even just current technology, outdated technology that we have right now, are very susceptible to hacks. The ethics for it is not figured out. I mean, even something as like tracking clicks on Facebook, which is tech that's been around for many years, like they don't have good policies around it. Though that data is not safeguarded, so definitely like the governance of that data is well behind like where the tech could be. So that definitely calls for huge concern there.
Mm.
Fair enough.
So then why would, I mean, because it's twofold, right? Because Elon is what? Elon is about 60 years, somewhere around there, 50 and 60, somewhere around there.
So
Nah, nah, nah,
How
nah,
old
nah,
is
nah, nah,
Elon?
nah, 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 nah. I don't know, but he's not
Check
60.
check 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 that.
yeah,
I
I'm
will
checking
just
that
try and
now.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
49,
basically,
49.
49.
49,
He had a
50,
mini
right?
40s though. He had
10
a mini
years,
40s.
10,
Mini 40s.
49, 49, right? You know, he obviously is looking at himself as, you know, like in his prime now. And one of the big, you know, things that came up from since 1956 to now is this concept of transhumanism and being able to move past the singularity. What I mean, I just understand it from this diagram being when machine intelligence pass human intelligence and you can't go back. The key thing is that you can't go back. So all of the, you know, they say, well, you know, cell phones, you're already a cyborg in your cell phone and stuff. But to me, I could throw away my cell phone now and go back to the beginning. So it's just an addiction then. But with Neuralink, you get a sense that it has some irreversibility to it. Does that mean it dovetails a little closer with the singularity concept?
Yeah, I think like there is like a wide range of opinions of like the singularity, how it will happen, if it will happen, timelines. And I think yeah, like this is definitely accelerated along that path. And I think in my opinion, it probably still won't happen in our lifetimes.
Right.
I think a lot of things need to happen and a lot of things need to go right. I think that's the other thing that people underestimate is that a lot of advancement has to be made and a lot of mistakes have to not be made in order for this to progress upon itself. But yeah, I mean, like you brought up Elon's age, and I think yeah, like that's probably on his mind. This transhuman.
Yeah. But moving out away a bit from Elon and Neuralink, right? Because you know, we as you said, it might not be in our lifetime. We might see some of these things come to pass, right? Or come to pass, sorry. But when it comes to AI, what are the practical uses of AI right now, or like a lower level of AI? Is there any AI right now in things that we are exposed to in, you know, in daily
Everyday
life?
life.
Would you say that there's any AI right now that people are exposed to?
Yeah, and I think it's not just in technology, right? So like machine learning is I kind of think as the prerequisite for artificial intelligence. But
Right.
for example, like genome sequencing is like a solved problem that's very fast now. And actually a lot of the vaccine development, people are able to develop vaccines against viruses that don't exist already. And that's because they're able to, you know, like run out the entire gamut of like these are all the things. So if you think of that as like predictive technology, like that
Yeah.
is one example, right?
Yeah, I would say definitely that those things are you know, pretty much AI. You know what I mean? The machine learning and so on. So, and would you say that when it comes to operating systems like Siri and so on, right? That we would see within the next, let's say, decade, these things becoming more powerful in the way it's integrated into our daily lives and so on?
Yeah, I think for sure, as like many people mentioned in the comments, I think like, you know, Facebook recommendations, like Siri recommendations, all these things are examples of AI, and they're still a little bit immature in that they can't make very like deep recommendations, but Google Assistant, all of those things, those are kind of the forefront of consumer tech AI. But I think like having basically a virtual assistant fully functional capability is something that is on the horizon.
It has AI and machine learning made humans obsolete in any way in terms of the job market and all of that?
So I would say it's changed the job market a bit in terms of jobs that could be automated, that human intelligence is better replaced by something that could remember better or store more data. Like we have definitely seen that. So
Yeah.
for sure, I think it has evolved. I wouldn't say obsoleted, but yeah.
Yeah.
But so Cora, so would AI be able? And I don't mean there's no way, but would AI be able to like replace your job or your experience in terms of like software development? Could the AI code for itself in future? Then is that a thing?
I mean they already have like many algorithms that like self-learn or able to, you know, like programs that write other programs. That's kind of already widely known. I think the part of a job of being a software engineer is like realizing how to move on to the next level of reasoning and understanding and like evolving in like I started off my career writing these type of programs, but that's like that's a given now. So like how do I design programs at another level that handles these, right? So you continually have to keep moving up the stack and being able to utilize that in your tool set as a software developer.
Right.
Well, you want to take it away, Torian?
No, I was going to ask, as you kind of say, with the software, writing software to the thing, are we here, like, I guess, police agencies making use of AI photos and things like that, and the possible consequences coming out of it? What are some of the, like, negative things, outside of the obvious ones, that you kind of see coming, or maybe that you have experience in working with AI and software in general?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of it is like challenges faced right now with data privacy, how to anonymize data, how to fit that into current kind of rules, regulations, concepts or notions of privacy. Like, do I own what I clicked on, like different things like that. So I think like a lot of interesting like borderline ethics questions come in there. And then also with this like new treasure troves of data, like security of them, who is able to view them, that's also a huge challenge there.
Okay.
We are going to have just letting people know, we are going to have a question comment segment at the end, which is not too far from now. So I seen Butch and things. So Butch, if you could just bring it back a little later as well. We'll look for it if you're not here, but still, if everybody could hold their questions from the question comment segment we're going to have, right? Yeah. When I think about AI, me not being a programmer or anything like that, and not being somebody versed in the topic, much of what I know about it is what I would have seen in film and read in literature. I mean, it has been something that has been at the forefront of science fiction and things for so long. I see somebody in the comments mention something about the Twilight Zone and AI and all of that. And when you think about movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, to things like the Terminator, you see all these different expectations of AI and the dangers of AI. But I think that something you were touching on just now is a current danger of AI and machine learning, which is this issue of surveillance capitalism. Do you have any thoughts on the issue of surveillance capitalism and the fact that there's so much of this machine learning geared towards looking at our data, geared towards looking at our consumer choices, geared towards making a profile of us? What's your thoughts on that, or do you have a stance on that?
Yeah, I think like the first step is visibility, providing the visibility into what data do companies know about me, right? So like, just think about websites you go and you say like accept all cookies. Like, do you know what that means? Probably most people don't know what that means, right? So yeah, so Signal, for example, I don't know if you saw this story. So they tried to they came out with an ad against Instagram, and the ad was basically highlighting all the data that someone would have about that Instagram would have about you, right? And Instagram actually banned that ad. So I'll send a link in the chat. But it was basically a bunch of characteristics that Instagram is able to derive about yourself and your profile. And I think like step one is like us as a consumer being able to know what data that these companies have on you and in a consumable form. So, moving past the accept all cookies or like, okay to share my data, like,
which is by the way, recently Apple, I think in the new iOS update, they are asking, allow app to track, allow app to track. So, I mean, as you say, those things it's easy to click and just say, all right, no tracking, and feel like I'm free. You know what I mean? But is it that people need to pay more attention? And can you just give the layman a bit of insight into what actually we share on a daily basis that we might not realize that we are sharing with the apps and so on?
Yeah, so I think so let's see what someone is sharing the screen right now. But this is
Yeah.
the example of the signal ad where it's able to figure out all these things based on posts that you like, based on stories that you have, things like that. So I think there are like some very clear pieces of data that are well defined that we know companies track, like location, for example. So I think location is an example of like a binary one where like you can turn location on or off. But some of the more sophisticated one, like preferences, different type of posts that you like, things like that, those are pieces of data that are currently being tracked right now.
So Dennis, as somebody in the field who might be, or maybe you have already, have to work on something like this, is there like a point where your ethics come into play and like you're gonna be like, I don't think I'll be able to work on this one, and what is that point and how you think you will handle that in this situation, because now that's your livelihood, you know?
As a
Yeah, so
professional.
that's a really good question, and I think a lot of software engineers like actually do struggle with that. But I think as a software engineer and like in a lot of people's jobs, like you should think with the customer first mindset. And if you're trained like that, like how am I best advocating for my customer? So customer should be ahead of company in most jobs that you think about, right? So with that in mind, like obviously like more data is useful for the company because they're able to make better recommendations, they're able to sell better ads. But it's not a zero-sum game. Like there are sloppy ways to do it. You could just collect all the data, don't anonymize it, don't care about customer privacy. But you have to make the commitment to doing the harder work of advocating for the customer. If I were the customer in this case, which data would they really care about to make a good decision, or are they just taking too much data? So that's an example. Data retention is another one. So it's about being a customer and a user advocate. And I think like in individual jobs that may be hard to do, but in as a software developer, if you have that mindset, there will always be a job for you.
So what is, as you say, you got to be a advocate for your user, customer user. What is that really like in reality when you go to management, upper management? Hey, I ain't like how this going, and not necessarily with you, but like in the field, in the industry, in your peers. I'm sure you guys have conversations about. Listen, I bring this to my manager, and them say, then I want to hear that.
Yeah, so that I think like those are difficult conversations. I mean, not engineers don't have the kind of sway that some of the higher ups would have. But I mean, you've read kind of in the tech industry of mass resignations, people taking a stand, and you've seen that with social issues. So a fair number of people quit at Facebook over the decisions, the political decisions to show the Donald Trump post and not. And similar conversations, believe it or not, do happen with privacy and data as well. And the other thing I would say is that there are many jobs out there that will still value your work even if you don't completely sell out the user. And like someone said in the comments that Facebook is like we are not Facebook's customers, and that's true. Facebook as a company, they are selling data. The people buy data, the customers. But as a developer, you have to think you're developing your product for the
we are
end.
we are the product. We are the
Yeah.
product. In the Facebook scheme of things, we are the product because it's our data and what we do on Facebook that helps them, because we are just consumers at the end of the day in the whole realm of it. And as you know, the whole surveillance capitalism and all of that. So yeah, there are a lot. I would say that our people need to take a little more active interest into what exactly they are leaving, that footprint they are leaving online. And I mean, it's more a collective thing, a societal thing, because when you look at things like Cambridge Analytica, and you look at the situation with with Trump and Facebook and the elections, and people saying that and collusion with Russia and all of this, you get to realize that in social media especially, and the way that they can, and I mean, it's not really to say AI per se, people are making policy choices and how, and a lot of this was brought to the court's attention, and they questioning Zuck and thing, and they're like, we don't do this, but this time, it's a kind of, he just staring at them there because he know very well what he's be doing. It comes to you come to the realization that right now we are creating the climate for which we can be manipulated by. You know what I mean? And I think people don't realize that we are giving people authorities, if you want to call it that, or whoever has the agendas to use the social media now to sway us in certain directions. And then you have this whole thing with companies and so on getting involved with governments in order to sway political thought and all this. You have any thoughts on that whole situation?
Yeah, I would say like the way I think about it is like, yeah, we do live in a capitalist society that values that, but we're not resigned to living in that society, right? Like,
correct.
This discussion or like our whole betterment, like there are things we can change within the system and like with our own behaviors, with our family, within society, right? So
right.
The resignation that this is capitalism and this is how capitalism works, like I refuse to accept that as the reality, right? Like, yeah, I don't think you'll live a very meaningful life if you just accept that this is the way the world works.
Yeah, and also to add to that, I mean, what you're facing in terms of the concept of ethics and whatnot, that is something that all professions I think face. It's just that you face it in different ways. But it's a matter of separating your position in a company versus what sort of training you have. You know what I mean? So like in my case, you're a trained, certified civil engineer. I could tell you when I went to one of the islands in Kushrai, they advised them, listen, this is the scheme you need to protect the ocean. They were like, no, they want a seawall. And politics get to play and they end up saying, well, yes, we're going and build a seawall. But at that time, it's like, listen, well, my recommendations on paper. So it's always something where you would always advise. You give technical advice, but you know what I mean, it's always up to them to decide what really they want to take or not, because there's always those sort of challenges you will face, but it would always be a training that I think would sort of guide those decisions.
Definitely. Really, really good insight there, Dennis. Good to know that's the way you think about it, because it's reassuring to someone like me, who's out of the fray, to know somebody who's in the fray of it has that kind of stance. At this point in time, we want to open up the floor for comment question segment. And we had some from before that were already there, so we'll pull up some of those. But the other people who have questions, anything to do with programming, software development, AI, these topics, Dennis is here to answer your questions. So at this point, we'll ask, okay, yes, Torian brought up one here. This is from Nigel, John Andre Das. He says, what's your programming language of choice? Would you recommend Python as a good language for approaching machine learning?
Yeah, so I would definitely say Python ranks like right up there in terms of being generally useful for programming, very approachable, has a good ecosystem with machine learning. Like as you get into machine learning, you'll pick up some specialized languages with regards to stats and learning R and things like that. But I think Python is definitely like kind of the canonical place to start. And I think one key point I want to highlight here is like don't necessarily like tie yourself down to a language. Like always be kind of flexible in learning. So like that gives you so much more power and flexibility.
Okay, thanks for that, Nigel. We'll move on to Butch, right? A man from the year himself. How can a country like TNT that is still in the dark ages with relation to technology and policy and regulation get a handle on these types of technology, especially since it's constantly evolving also?
A long question, by which
I'll take a step after that one. And that's very true, especially the dark ages part.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give a positive spin on this answer, which is like I don't know the path, but like coming out from the dark ages, so to speak, into like a evolved policy, like sometimes that's a benefit in the sense that you don't have a bunch of these like intermediate policies that don't work that you're tied into. Like for example, if you think of the EU and this like they spent all this time like debating about cookies or not, and like all of that, and like really it doesn't it doesn't solve the core of the problem. So kind of approaching it with a fresh slate helps. You get to see what other countries do, and then Trinidad being relatively small, you could you could experiment with like widely deploying policies, and then if they work, iterate on them. If they don't work, roll them back. So in some sense, like you do have some advantages in a country like Trinidad. It's kind of a smaller, more constrained problem.
Oh, there you go. Moving on.
Lovely. Kevin Babulal, is Google gonna beat GPT-3 soon? Don't know what that is, but maybe you could let me know.
I don't really know. Is this like a chess playing system? Probably. I mean, I don't. Kevin Babulal probably knows more than me.
Kevin gotta come back to you now.
Kevin, maybe you can let us know what that is in the comments, Kevin.
Maybe Kevin is a Neuralink user right now.
Kevin, don't tell me that. Don't do that now, Kevin. let us know what GPT-3 is, Kevin. We'll be glad to tackle
We'll
that.
get back there, yeah.
Yes. Saeed says, does AI have a place in Trinidad? What industries would benefit the most, and where should we start?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So actually, like there are a bunch of trainees kind of all over the world in the AI space, and like a part of some communities and groups, and then that in the AI space, kind of across the world. But I don't know if you saw like the article about Patrick Hussein and like the agriculture piece that he had. So I don't know if someone could bring that up, but agriculture is one area for sure that AI does help a lot with, and it's kind of a well-established program. So, a lot of data regarding crops and planting times, irrigation schedules, those sorts of things. So that's one. And then, like, of course, the like energy industry in Trinidad obviously has room to grow out in terms of AI. I don't know. I'm not that plugged into like the oil and gas industry in Trinidad, but if you think of like predicting where oil and gas reserves would be, like some of the people on this call like would know, and they've known that more data helps, and being able to have predictive algorithms there would help a lot.
Well, I think if we did know that, we would be acting much differently than we act now as a nation and as leaders in a nation, where their priorities are, because I think the projections for that ain't too bright now, brother. Let's see. But I just me, I am not Siri. So then Dennis, you have touched, this is from Travis Dirk Maiku. Mr. Maiku says, have you touched Microsoft's Power BI stuff? And what do you think a lot of corporate businesses in Trini are getting into it?
I have not touched it myself, and I've only kind of heard from other people. But yeah, I think that's another area of like customer analytics, business intelligence. Like Trinidad has a relatively diverse like corporate business system. There are no like common systems there right now. So I think like using some of these Microsoft, Salesforce type of tools would help. I don't have that much insight into it.
Yeah, I would say one thing on that question though, that while they talk about like the business intelligence, be mindful of what your company could handle, because what would have happened is many people just want the fancy thing because it working good elsewhere and whatnot. But when you actually try and roll it out, what you tend to see is that the people not really ready for it, and it takes a lot of time in order to train them, in order to get ready for that new level of technology. So also be mindful of that there's a big steep learning curve when it comes to applying and rolling it out on the ground.
Yeah, I think totally. Let's say, I mean, like I think people have to use their own human intelligence, analyzing some of the results that these business intelligence and artificial intelligence tools spit out, right? So.
So from Devon McLean, would you be willing to be a consultant?
Point man, boy.
90 point man.
To say to come head this tech in agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago, I guess.
I mean, it's a job offer. I mean, we can
we'll talk about this after,
we
will fix you up with the link,
Yeah. I'm always willing. So yeah.
Somebody just confirm what GPT-3 is for us. I don't know. Let me see if I can bring it up.
Natural language processing. Okay.
Let me see if I can bring back the original question.
If Google gonna beat GPT-3, I still not sure, but again, it's me. I am layman.
Yeah, natural language processing is where they try to break down, like sentences and language into different structures and being able to predict from it.
It's have a question there. I even know.
We'll come to it. Don't worry. We'll come to it. So, from Bisham, is it possible for AI to build emotional intelligence?
Ex machina.
Yeah, so I mean, like part of the Neuralink roadmap that I saw on there is like developing emotions are on the roadmap of things, and there's kind of a lot of theoretical research about tying emotions to specific neurons firing. So being able to like first gather that data, like how those neural signals map to emotions, like that's step one, and then building intelligence on top of that. Yeah, I could see it possible to build emotional intelligence. We already see like facial recognition technology that could detect, sadness, happiness, so like facial cues. So just think of that.
So I find that that facial recognition and worse yet, when they find any pictures, he's been in the corner of a picture. You can't even see your face good, and that thing zooming in and saying, "Is this you?" It's like, that is me, but that thing looking like me. How you know that is me, dog? Facebook dog shit. All right. Could Neuralink help Torian become a professional footballer? That's a hard one.
That
one is a real hard one. That one really hard.
No need for Neuralink, bro.
I don't think you could handle. I don't think Dennis could answer that.
I think a lot of countries have professional leagues now, right? So.
Yeah.
Dennis got jokes. Okay. But I think maybe what I get from that question is, will Neuralink be able to improve people's skills? Whether it's not just football, but will you become a better poet? Will you be able to play the saxophone? Will you be able to how far?
I think that's actually a great way of thinking about it. So like a bunch of the competitors to Neuralink looking at helping disabled folks who don't have use of limbs, and like that's kind of the first use cases, like how to enable them to either regain some motor control or be able to do it in other ways to control devices like they would control a hand or a limb. So I think like that's possible.
Awesome. Yeah.
And this is from Rajiv, and he's very polite. He says, "Hi, good night, everyone. Could you maybe give some insight into the use of AI in crime detection, criminal profiling, likelihood of crimes taking place in certain areas, and so on? Do you have any knowledge about that and its use?"
I mean, I don't have any direct knowledge out of like what is other than what like you see in kind of the film and the sci-fi world, but like you could imagine like with the budgets of like CIA, FBI, like those kind of things, like there is like extensive AI being used to try to predict terrorist attacks and things like that. How that like translates to like the police service and lower down in crime, like I don't know what the state of that is right now.
Yeah, but we gotta ask Snowden. When we have Snowden on, we got Snowden. Hopefully we have Snowden next year. I don't reach out to him. Right. Let's see what else we have here.
Yeah, looking for some more questions.
Upload skills. I know Kung Fu. I think maybe higher up we might have some, but let's just get some data here on GPT-3. Given any text prompt like a phrase or a sentence, GPT-3 returns a text completion in natural language. Developers can program GPT-3 by showing it just a few examples or prompts. We've designed the API to be both simple for anyone to use, but also flexible enough to make machine learning teams more productive. So is what I think he's asking too is that the fact that Google has become so efficient at doing so many different things in terms of that they have normalized, like for example, something simple as Siri. A few years ago, and this is just my own experience, Siri was not as efficient as when you talk to Google and you tell Google certain things. Siri, you needed to speak to Siri like you had to put on an accent or something now in order to get through to Siri. Whereas Google itself, was just way ahead of it in terms of voice recognition and all that. So I don't know if he's talking now about predictive, like predictive right when you're when writing and so on, predictive text, that kind of thing. Is it like that? I don't know.
Yeah, so I think from what's being said, yeah, like the natural language processing is like kind of all aspects of that, like being able to predict text given like some prompt or being able to interpret a question. So yeah. Yeah, actually my brother worked a little on the Google Assistant team.
Nice. What was that experience with him?
I don't know. You'll have to ask him. I think it was good.
You sure I brother, mate?
Yeah.
But your brother work with Google.
Yeah, he's at Google right now.
Oh, so he in the fray too.
He in the field.
Oh, it's like
the family in the fray.
You're talking to our robot overlord right now. He on the show.
Right now. I see they have some things up their sleeve, man.
But
Right.
Dennis, one question. In relation to like what they're talking about comparing Google with the GPT-3 and whatnot, that is on the software side of the conversation of progressive AIs. In terms of the future of AIs, how much you think hardware restricts that? Because I hear them talk a lot about at that level of AI, you would need like quantum computing and advanced quantum computers. But the problem is they haven't figured out a good way to keep those computers cool. What do you think? Is it that there will be a hardware restriction at some point in time?
Yeah, I think that definitely like if you dig deep into the Neuralink, like one of the impressive things is like just how small they were able to make this chip with like how many sensors they have in it. But like to get it to the point where you have a big enough number of sensors and then being able to process data locally, you want to be able to process as much data locally as possible so that you can make a decision, as opposed to sending it off to the cloud or something like that. So definitely, like I think you're exactly right in the sense that like we will have to get to something like quantum computing for these very tiny embeddable devices to be able to work on their own.
Fair enough. I think last question for the night. How has virtualization in the workplace changed in the last year? Has the trajectory of the tech accelerated since COVID lockdown and people come out of office and running home machines away from the office infrastructure?
Yeah, this is a great question. So like working at VMware, that's kind of like what we specialize in is like virtualization in the workplace. So yeah, there's definitely been advances in terms of like, obviously like the tools that we all know, like Zoom and the video conferencing, but I think there have been a lot of advances in being able to have a virtual desktop and having that be widely usable and kind of across all industries, but even in the tech industry, like how do I set up technology products on my computer and be able to have that, be able to do the work that I need to do that I would have otherwise done in the office. So whether that's like controlling some piece of hardware or having controlling a server, different things like that. So definitely accelerated.
Okay, fair enough. And me myself, so like, might be a weird question, but software, AI, this is your career for life now, or you think you might ever do something different? You might get fed up by it. This is your passion. What are you thinking?
I think to run for prime minister. No.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Cambridge Analytica with your brother in Google and you in VMware and all that kind of thing. One more question.
You'll get it.
Yeah. No, I think for me, like, yeah, it is a career. It's like one interest, but I think a lot of these skills transferable, being able to break down a problem, analyze it, come up with solutions. Like, you all will kind of see the trends in that. So as you talk about different topics, you're able to analyze it. So, who knows what holds in the future? But,
yeah. Last question. How can we ensure that governments, political organizations do not abuse technologies like AI?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think a lot of the like one upside is a lot of these AI and technological advances are coming from the private sector and from private companies. So they're not immediately, at least in the capitalist world, in China is a little bit different. But one thing is like there is like a separation of private and public sector, which actually helps governments from directly abusing it. But then there needs to kind of be an oversight committee which deals with some of these tech issues, tech ethics issues. And, as we've seen in the US, at least, different politicians asking questions of Zuckerberg and the Google head and all of these people, like they are very ignorant of the details of this, right? Like we had a much more detailed conversation than people who actually run in the country about these things, right? Which is
it was strange.
So,
it was strange to look at when that was taking place. It was like, on both sides too. Some of the politicians, they don't know what they're talking about, and then Zuck himself is kind of give off this kind of vibe, like he doesn't even know what he's thinking too sometimes. So it was strange to say the least.
Yeah.
But this question, it's always valid. How do we know you're real? You could be an AI using a virtual avatar. I guess we'll never know.
Yeah. So when the borders are reopened and we could see each other again in person, then that'll be help. So.
Yeah, but then you gotta cut yourself and let me see the blood. Anyhow, next episode, guys, we are going to be having SOE focused episode once more, focusing on the more legal side of the state of emergency and what we can expect and what powers are really given to the armed forces and so on during the SOE and everything to go with that, with attorney Fayola Sandy, civil and criminal law. Okay, she's going to be joining us next week, and that's going to be good. So don't forget to share up the live, even if you didn't do it before. You could still do it now. It's still a share at the end of the day. And make sure when you guys come back next week to get that share button going. Right about now, I just want to add that I really like the participation from the comments. I would say that you all actually took up a greater part of our discussion, and it was really engaging. A lot of things that me, Torian, and Shankara probably could not have come up with ourselves, and that is why we have this space here for you all to engage us and so on. I saw Frank ask about imagine you having your body being hacked. Well, I mean, that's what we were saying. What you're really telling yourself now, or what yourself telling yourself. So with that, I would like to thank Dennis for taking this time to speak with us. I wasn't in the same class as Dennis in NAPS, but at the same time, I don't know if he remembers, we actually used to go teach Ajay lessons together at a point when in Standard 5. We used to go teach Ajay, yeah, right down the road.
Teach Ajay focus on Dennis and not UFC.
Yeah, I mean, go for luck is not super luck, not Torian. Go for luck is not super luck. But yeah, Dennis, it's really good to have you, man. Thanks for all the wisdom imparted today, and I want to thank my co-hosts Torian and Shankara, for putting this together. I know Shankara was super hyped for this episode. I hope it fulfilled his appetite. All right. So with that, I want to tell everybody, have a good night. Yes, we know Dennis has his own fan club, and well, big up Naps as usual. I mean, that goes without saying, right? All right, people. So blessed love. Thanks for staying with us so long, and we will see you guys next week for the SOE episode with Fayola. Blessed love.
All right. Later.
Blessed love.
Later.